we on?
You're on, Luis.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on our third episode of Perspectives for Pastors Talk About Race. We are so thankful that you have joined us today. God has been good. God has been able to be in the midst of our conversations and just to be able to share some perspectives. We're making our conversations that we've been able to have together as pastors. We're making them from private to public, and we're excited that you are able to join us today. Today is going to be just an amazing day. We're going to be able to talk about the Black Lives Matter meeting that happened in Lansing yesterday. If you tuned into that meeting, it was wow. It was awesome. But at the same time, there was a lot of tension, and we want to be able to address as pastors, address some of those tensions that you were able to witness yesterday. And it's our honor as pastors to be able to have Pastor Sean Holland with us today. Sean Holland is a good friend of ours. He's an amazing person, and we're excited to have him today. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Tom. Tom is going to be able to speak to Sean about the meeting yesterday and get his perspective and get his input. He works very directly with the Black Lives Matter movement in Lansing, and we're excited to have him today. So go ahead, Tom.
Sean, thank you so much for joining us for Perspectives tonight. I feel a little bit like we're observers, but you were there on the stage, so to speak, in the planning of it. And really just as a personal friend of mine, your presence there let me enter into it kind of with arms open rather than in a defensive posture. So I just want to ask you what's important for us to know about what happened last night.
Well, first of all, let me just say thanks, and it's such a privilege to be on and to be able to share. You rarely get the opportunity to have a follow-up to a major meeting that we had last night. It was epic, and there were many interests that were represented there, but one heart, and that was for the city of Lansing and the people of Lansing, right? So I think the thing that I would like, and I think everyone there, no one was there to pontificate, to push their own agenda. I simply introduced myself just because it's just the most appropriate thing to do if you're going to host the thing, right? But no one was there for any agenda other than, number one, to try to provide a space for key conversations to happen during this time, because we want our community, number one, to be heard, right? And we want our community to be safe. And so that's what it was all about. It was like, hey, look, that we've got cities that are burning around the country. They're rioting in London. Even the Pope issued a statement concerning Mr. Floyd's murder. So when this thing is hit around the world, it's a big deal. And Lansing is the state capital. And right. We wanted to provide some kind of leadership without just rioting and reacting, right? And so it was the first step of many steps of providing an avenue for the community to be heard, as well as for the community to feel other leaders, aka the mayor and the Ingham County Health Department officials.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sean, what's tell us just what your role is. Like, what's your official role at this point? I think you've actually gone on staff at One Love Global right now. Is that can you just fill us in on what part you played and how that all was put together?
Yeah, I think so. My official, title is Director of Transformational Leadership. I have been working with Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, that entire movement that is in collaboration with the city of Lansing, the mayor's office, which started under Virg Bonero, and as well as the Kellogg Foundation. And they basically just said, hey man, like if we could dream, they went to cities and said, if you could dream and you could get rid of racism in your city, what would that look like and what would it take?
Yeah.
If you could totally dismantle racism, what would it take? And there are many people around this city, from education to law enforcement to civic leaders to elected officials that have worked in from the prosecutor's office, mayor's office, fire, police, you name it, and have literally laid out a map on what it would take, what are the issues, the systemic issues, and how it impacts our lives here in Lansing. So the conversation last night was not a brand new conversation. This is a conversation that's been happening for years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everybody on that call knows each other. This wasn't like the first introduction. You know what I mean? Just like us having conversations now. We all smiling. We know each other. So, that's just how it was. But so my role is really to provide leadership. We do youth leadership, like 13 to 25, on organizing and voting and raising up that next level of leaders. That's why, that was part of my role as well as providing a level of leadership for our community. We have the spiritual community oftentimes that's disconnected to politics because we don't know how to navigate those waters.
Right.
Either we lean all the way out or we lean too far in, right? And so there's no line of demarcation. So my job is to be a liaison. I also serve on the Interfaith Council for the mayor's office, appointed and approved by Mayor Andy Schor. So, that's my role, is to provide leadership, to be able to speak and say, hey, I think we need to consider this. These are some ideas. I've been in the Lansing area serving as a pastor since 2004. So I've been around, and not awfully long, but I've been around a minute. And I've been pastoring in this city for 17 years.
Yeah.
Sean, what was sort of if there's sort of one big thing that you all were hoping, or perhaps we were hoping to come out of that, what was it? And did that happen?
Well, let me give you some backdrop here. I think that one of the things that we did not want to do, there are a host of organizations that represent the diversity of the Lansing community, right? We were not speaking for every organization in Lansing, okay? So that didn't give us the right to walk through the door with a list of demands that represent everybody, right? There are other groups that have demands, that have things that are important to their community, okay? So our role last night was, what we felt was the huge win was, if this community, our leaders, are not willing to call racism what it is, then you can't fix it.
Right.
We can't even collaborate. We don't have a rallying point. So when the Ingham County Health Department declared racism as a public health emergency, that was the win.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You put it on the same level as COVID-19, that it disproportionately impacts black and brown people, and ultimately the entire community, right? And so that was the major win. We needed a rallying point for other organizations to be able to say, okay, they've recognized that racism is real. It impacts black and brown people. We're willing to even pass a resolution stating that. Now the mayor can get on board. Different people can get on board. Now we can begin to have a true community collaboration. But someone had to walk through the door, and that was what the purpose was last night. It was also to give us a sense of the heart of our leaders, right? So that's why we asked the key leaders from the Ingham County Public Health Department to be there, and our mayor. He's the highest representative in our city. We have a strong governmental system in Lansing, right? And so we invited him. And it wasn't a job interview. He's already got the job, right? So it wasn't about interviewing and anything like that. We were literally saying, hey, community, in the midst of the worst time that we know, that we're dealing with racism and a pandemic, a public health issue, we need to talk, man. Like, where's everybody at? Before we start marching and putting signs up, we need to find out, before we lay demands down by any organization, what is the level of commitment from those who hold the power.
Yeah.
What answer did you get from that? I mean, I think you got a really clear answer from the health department. What's your response to the mayor's reaction or interaction in the meeting?
Well, I think, when you're dealing with elected officials, there are a lot of moving parts that they're trying to navigate through. There are a lot of constituencies, and I think sometimes we don't take into account that, when you're talking to the mayor, you're not talking to a pastor, right? You know what I'm saying? You're not talking to a pastor. We want the president to be our pastor. He's not he's the president. You know what I'm saying? He gonna say some lies. He gonna do a little. That's just how it works. Politics, you don't ever answer a question. You flip it back. You would say, "What's your position?" My position is your position. We stand together. That didn't answer the question. That's politics. It's a game, man. And so I think a lot of times people get into their emotions when the church enters or we enter into another space. Watch this, where the rules of engagement are not the same. It's not the same rules. So when we were asking him questions, of what we're trying to do is to draw out. So you ask it again, you come another way. We're trying to draw out what is the heart and intent. And what I heard was, I'm trying. That was clear. I mean, and I know him personally. You know what I'm saying? I heard him saying, look, man, we got a plan. If I would have known it's going to go down like this, I would have had the chief here and I'd have had the fire chief. So what I heard from him was, I'm trying. And the community is saying, we need it more.
What more did the community need?
I think one of the things that is very difficult for anybody during this time is to meet the needs of a large group, but empathy, a greater sense of empathy.
Sure.
This is be honest, right? I hear you. And I think he attempted to do that. I hear you. I understand. You know what? We've made mistakes in the city. Things are not right like we want them at City Hall. We do have some disparities in hiring and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, and I can share my plan with you. Matter of fact, boom, you just put the budget up on the screen, right? Okay, so you know what I'm saying? I think it was more of, we just want to hear your heart, right? You're the mayor. And I think it was more of an empathetic moment that I understand racism. First of all, I see it in our city, and I am committed, just like the Ingham County Health Department, in calling racism what it is and dealing with it swiftly and in the best way we can do it according to the Constitution and statutes and da-da-da-da-da. I think that's what the community was listening for.
I'm hearing you respond to the mayor's response, not super positively, but on the positive side, like middle positive. Is that on a 10-point scale? You sound like a 5.5 to me.
Tom, I have no idea where you're coming up with these numbers from. And so I'm gonna let you go ahead and do your number scale, because the scale might go from 1 to 50. So I don't know where you at with this. All I'm saying is, and listen. So let's just be clear about this. Let's be super clear. I mean, I'm smiling because you guys know that's just my personality. But what we asked was not difficult. We asked, number one, when you look at your budget, would you divest from the police department and invest back into the community? Why is that
right? That's
not a bad thing, right? In our community, I'm talking about black folk that's like me. You understand me? that's like me, black folk. We don't have the same resources that the suburbs have. So we need greater funding for mentoring and after-school programs and parks and rec. We have mentors. I worked in the Lansing School District for free for 4 years. Me and 4 other mentors mentoring 4th, 5th, and 6th grade boys. And I could not take the mentorship program to the next level because the district just didn't have, whatever. And so it was like, we're here 3 days a week. We got to go make some money to feed our families. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm saying that it was just an epic moment. And so we were like, are you willing to divest the police department? We feel we're over policed and we're at a stalemate. You disagree. You say the community doesn't feel safe. And so that was a moment, right? So again, that was a moment where I couldn't control that. That was an ask, right? Mm-hmm. The second ask was, hey, we've got some real issues with policing in our community. You have police that are in our community that don't have a relationship with us. So at every interaction, there's issues, right? Mm-hmm. I'm afraid, you afraid, okay? And so either I'm gonna run, and if you think I'm guilty, the law says you can shoot me in the back. So we have to tell young black men, if you get stopped by the police, and you, even if you're guilty, don't run. But you're not gonna tell. You just not gonna tell somebody. They gonna run. The feet run, the line run behind the feet, and you get shot. So it's just a bad situation. So hey, why don't we incentivize the unions to help us with this, so that we can have people in our community that are from our community, live in our community, police in our community.
Yeah.
Right. So people were like, you guys didn't have any asks. It was like, no, you wanted it to be pretty, right?
Yeah.
The message was, you didn't get redemption without bloodshed. Where there is no shedding of blood, there is no remission of sins. That's the book that y'all preach from. I read it a couple of times. I know you don't get redemption unless you go to hell first and disappear and come back. Am I preaching? Now y'all asked me to come on the show, so I'm on the show. You understand? We want this pretty Jesus that brings salvation to everybody without pain and suffering.
Right.
This man was whipped at the Roman Praetorium and then marched up the Via Dolorosa, got up to Golgotha's hill, and was nailed to. He was lynched. On a tree. Mm-hmm. And then put in a borrowed tomb, and then the government tried to do a cover-up. I'm just saying it's in the book. So my point is this was not a put the mayor on Front Street. This was, look, we are at a Kairos moment. Time stops for us to make critical decisions. It's not working. And I have private information that if I wanted to call the mayor out, I would have put it all out. I didn't do that. I didn't disrespect him by putting out information that I personally know. It wasn't about that. It was about trying to come together to see what the level of commitment was before we put demands out. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of talking.
Hey, I got. Well, we asked you to be on here to talk, so don't apologize for talking. And when you talk, it's a lot more interesting than when I talk. So, one last question for you, Sean. All of the mayor just put out. I'm not quite sure. It came out maybe even just recently, very like in the last hour or two, an apology video. Have you seen that? And
I have
what's
not.
your reaction to it if you've seen it?
I have not seen that video, but I think it's important to pause, because what you saw last night was when Black people control the conversation. Mm-hmm. And what Black people have been trained and socialized to internalize the emotions of the oppressor more than the oppressed. And so we feel your pain. We slavery taught us to take care of you and to minimize Black pain. And what we were not willing to do last night was to say, okay, we see you feeling uncomfortable, so we gonna just let up off the gas. No, we got Mike Brown, we got Tamir Rice, we got. So this isn't about how we're feeling, because we're all hurting. What we're asking for is flat out accountability. So I would like for you, Tom, and I like how you talk. You got a nice tonal pastoral voice. I would like for you to weigh in on the video since I didn't see it.
All right. Well, we're gonna do that. But so I'm gonna pray for you. We'll let you get back to the night, and you can keep watching and see how I weigh in on it. All right? How about
No, I'm staying right here. I ain't getting off. No, you're not putting me off your show. Listen, ladies and gentlemen on Facebook. Tom is trying to kick me off the pastor's show. Don't put up with it. Put the comments in the section and say, keep hollering on. All right? That's what I want y'all to do.
Hey, Pastor, do you feel ambushed? You know, because we saying you got to go. Do you feel?
Not at all. Nope. Y'all can ask me any question you want. You know, like the man said, you preach what you know, you produce who you are.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
You know what, Sean? I got these 3 guys behind me on my shoulders pushing me to do this stuff with you. So it's not just me talking.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me.
Man, thanks for coming out.
We want to pray for you. We want to pray for you.
Yeah.
All right. I couldn't have been prouder of you last night. I've told you this several times. I think in the white community, it starts with a relationship, builds trust, and it leads to action. And you've shared with me, and I've gotten to understand through our friendship, that it actually is the opposite way in the Black community, that it starts with action, it builds trust, that ends with relationship. Wherever, like whatever way it's gone between you and me over the last several years, our relationship and my love for you, like I said when we started this, gave me a posture of open arms to that meeting, and to come into it without defensiveness, to come into it really much more committed to what we're doing here, what you're doing, what we're doing together, what the 4 of us on this Perspectives thing is doing, things like the Poor People's Campaign, to really to take those specific action steps to improve the economic outlook of Black and brown people in the United States.
Yeah.
And that's a gift that you've given me personally. And I'm continually amazed that you have given me that gift. So they asked me to do this, to pray for you and then to kick you off, because
Tom, I think what you just said is proof that there is a God.
What, because you're friends with me?
Because I'm friends with you and I can love you. Look, folks, there is a Jesus somewhere. He's real. He's operating through me right now. But I want to leave you with this, though. Our heart is to do what Jesus did the way he did it.
Yeah.
That's good.
What Jesus did the way he did it. Jesus never shied away from injustice.
Yeah.
Right.
He met it head on. He spoke to it. He dealt with it. And that was the heart that I was coming from. And the theological perspective is doing what Jesus did the way that he did it. And when you look at our community in Lansing, our children in our schools, you look at where the Lansing district is compared to other districts in the state, somebody has to cry out. And that's where I was sitting in the seat to cry. I'm not perfect. I was simply saying we gotta have more for our babies and our community.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, hey, friends, let's pray for Sean. God, we give you thanks deep in our hearts for Sean Holland. And we pray that he would be able to do exactly what he just said, that he would do what Jesus did in the way that Jesus did it. And we pray that we would do that too, God, that Sean wouldn't be walking out by himself, but that the white pastors and brown pastors and Black pastors would walk alongside of him and walk together, not just alongside of him, but following you, that we would walk following you to do what you did in the way that you did it. We ask this in the name of Jesus and in the power of your Spirit, and all who agreed said, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Sean.
Man, appreciate you, bro. I love you.
Thanks, brother.
Wow. We just want to thank Sean again for being a part of this. We really appreciate you. We really believe in you. And God, we're just so thankful that we have leaders like that in our city that are willing not just to just preach on a Sunday morning, but actually get their hands dirty and do the work that Jesus actually wants us to do and actually get into the community and get our hands dirty. So we really appreciate that. Wow. It's kind of hard to transition from that because that was just there were so many emotions that were coming through my mind when he was talking specifically about the school system. I have a cousin who came from Puerto Rico after Hurricane Katrina, who has his kids in the Lansing school district. And he actually moved to some apartments in East Lansing. And he refused to take his kids from Lansing school district because he didn't want his kids to experience being different in the East Lansing schools. Just think about that. Think about just the fear that we have of being, in an all-white community. And we rather keep our kids in a place that might have not as much funding for education in order for them to be able to feel accepted. So that it touched my heart for sure. Oh, but we have a lot of reactions and we have a lot of perspectives to respond. And one of the first things that I want to ask us today in that conversation that happened yesterday is, what is our perspective on the response that Ingham County declared racism as a public health crisis? But not just our response, but what should be the church's response to this as the health department declared racism as a public health crisis in Ingham County? Whoever wants to start, or I could choose. I'll go ahead and choose. All right, Coye, go ahead. Start us off.
Great question. Great question. It's a lot of depth in that question. I will say this. Pastor Sean said it was a win because that was one of the things that they were trying to put forth and help the mayor to actually see is a reality for our community. And so I'm going to simply say I think it's a win because it's kind of one of the things they went in hoping to get. They got what they wanted out of it. I don't think it's a win from the standpoint that they had to force the mayor's hand or they had to manipulate it somehow. I think they presented the facts. They presented the information. They had the Ingham County, health department individuals who were there. They had those people in important positions, and they presented the facts and said, this is what we think. We strongly suggest you do this. So it wasn't manipulative. It was just simply presenting the facts, letting him make a decision. It was a little bit, I would say he probably had a lot of social pressure, but that sometimes is good. That's how often decisions get made. Facts along a little bit of pressure gets the right decision. So I think it's a win. With regard to the church, I think for the church, so what we have to recognize is something within the system, as we've been saying, with this whole police brutality, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, something is broken in the system.
Yeah.
So now, since we'll say the law side, or we'll say the political side says we need to declare this, then the church can come alongside and say, hey, because our city, because our public officials are saying this is what it is, now our ability to help and to help the right way, like getting more involved in the system, saying that it's broken. So how do we help repair it? How do we help fix it so that when we put it back together, it doesn't remain broken like it was prior to us now taking some action?
Yeah. Good. Curt, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed by the whole thing. I was definitely impressed by Dr. Shoyinka. She kind of just laid it out. She said, in nearly every health indicator, there is a disparity between races. I mean, she's not making stuff up. She represents the health department. She's in Ingham County, and she's saying in almost every single health indicator measurable. And then she listed obesity, diabetes, cancer rate, hypertension, mortality, infant mortality. It's infant mortality, and I don't know exactly if it's I think it's with the mother actually, is worse now than it was 15, 20 years ago regarding people of color.
Man.
And so to name it as it is, race, she went on to say racism is a disease. Racism is a disease.
Yeah.
And there's a state of emergency. This is an emergency crisis, and they're willing to acknowledge it. And it's almost like it's almost like people of color have been fighting and fighting and fighting. Allies have been fighting with them as well to just name the truth. Can we just be on the same playing field here? Can you just acknowledge my pain? You know, I was talking to someone recently that doesn't quite get it, and they work in the health field, and they're like, I don't get this whole Black Lives Matter thing, right? All lives matter. And I'm like, this is kind of Pastor Jerome said a similar thing, but if someone came in with a throat that's itchy and a throat they're saying I can't breathe, which throat do we need to pay attention to more?
Right.
Like people are crying out, I literally can't breathe. I'm suffocating. We're dying faster than other people. Our mothers are dying at an inequitable rate. Does anybody care? And so I think, man, it's powerful that the government in our county, the Board of Commissioners, hopefully they haven't resolved it yet, but I think they will. They're saying, no, I agree. I agree there's a disparity and it's a crisis. That's powerful. I'm not totally sure what the response is from the church, in all honesty. Man, I really don't know. I want to be obviously part of the solution. I'm still learning what that looks like to be an ally.
Yeah. Tom, you want to chime in?
Yeah, so I sort of see what took place there on two levels. One is just the facts of the situation. Curt laid those out really well. You all laid those out. I feel like I don't really need to say much more about that. I was impressed that Curt took such clear
good notes like that.
Yeah, I feel like a very bad student right now that I can't list off all the things that the doctor said. But I guess that's the good part of the team is that he did that, so we
don't have to
lean on him. Yeah, we can look over his shoulder at his notes.
So we can all cheat.
But the other layer that we haven't talked about is something that I think I looked at that whole meeting like a chess game. And that was a brilliant strategic move to put pressure on the mayor. The king, he's the king on the board. And I don't I'm in awe of the strategy of what happened last night. That wasn't random. I mean, there were certainly, just like in any chess game or any kind of game of strategy, there's stuff that happens that you didn't anticipate or didn't plan for. But to have the county commissioners declare this a state of emergency equivalent to the state of emergency of COVID-19, the king at that point on the chessboard is in perilous position. And that was brilliant strategy. I mean, high five for incredible community organizing to set that up. And the mayor had to follow that, because now, what's your response to COVID-19? Your response to racism should be the equivalent.
Yes.
Should be the equivalent. The game didn't end in a checkmate, but it did end in a check. And that was one. There's a lot of moves that we didn't see to get the pieces on the board in that configuration that put the king in check. The second thing, your question about the church, in the Wesleyan tradition, and John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist movement, the Methodist Renewal Movement in the Church of England, he carried with him on his circuit rides and so on, and all the sermons he preached, he always had just a handful of books with him. One of them that he always carried with him was his copy of it was his edition. Actually, he wrote it, called Primitive Physique, which was, he was a student of health and medicine, the best science of the day. And if you read this now, it would sound like a lot of home remedies and so on, and herbal treatments and so on, and things that you're like, I would never want to do that. But that was the best science of his day. And he carried that with him, and he had all of his preachers carry that, this sort of manual for physical health along with the preaching. And so when he came to town, he didn't just deliver the word of God in one hand, he delivered medical advice and again, in that day and age, he would have been the best educated person in the town.
Sure.
An Oxford trained, ordained priest in the Church of England. I mean, again, we're talking about the 18th century here, the 1700s, the time of the George Washington. And he thought it was his duty or his calling to not just bring the word of God, but also to bring health and the knowledge of health. So I would say that the church's response to a public declaration of a health crisis, whatever your response is to COVID-19, your response should be the same to racism.
Right.
Yeah.
If whatever your church is responding, like however seriously it's taking COVID-19, it should be of at least an equivalent response to racism. That's what I think the church should do. And different churches are responding in different ways to COVID-19. But I would guess that most of us haven't thought at all about prioritizing racism in the way that we prioritize COVID-19.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, because the truth is COVID-19 made us stop.
It did.
Yep.
COVID-19 made us stop. And
in our tracks.
And what is it going to take for racism to stop us in our tracks, to stop the church in its tracks? And I think this is just an important, to me, this was a huge win. And this is extremely personal for me, that they declared this a public safety crisis, because
public health crisis.
Yeah, public health crisis. I'm sorry, public health crisis. This is it's so personal to me. The reason why it's so personal to me, I have a friend in Muskegon, and she is a lawyer, and she tells me that the highest number of lawsuits for hospitals come from first-generation Hispanic families. First-generation Hispanic families. And my father has been one person that has been the victim of not good care in the hospitals. I had one time, my dad had a Mercedes. It was an older Mercedes, but yet it was a Mercedes, right? And my dad had a Mercedes, and when he was in, going through his heart situation, and he had the LVAD surgery, and one of the nurses asked him, "Whose car is this?" And my dad's like, "That's my car." And she's like, "No, this can't be your car. Whose car is it?" My dad's like, "Ma'am, that's my car." My dad's very straightforward. He's very unfiltered. You get what I'm saying? So he told the lady off. He's a pastor, but he told her off because he was just like, "Why can't I own a Mercedes? What's the issue? Why is a nurse asking me if I own the Mercedes or not?" And that was, and just seeing the stats and being able to talk to my lawyer friend, and how, the biggest lawsuits that come for hospitals, particularly in malpractice, come from first-generation Hispanics. And there's this kind of notion when people don't know the language that they treat them like they're dumb, right? Because they don't know the language. So, you speak slower so you can understand me, right? So this is really personal to me for Ingham County to say this. I think that it trickles down to everything else. Like you said, it's a check. It's a check. And I think it was a check for the mayor. And actually, I'm going to skip this question 3 because I think it's a good segue to question 3, if you were able to. So do you believe that the mayor's response, and Sean kind of alluded a little bit to this, was appropriate? And what is your perspective of the apparent ambush? Tom, I'm going to let you go ahead and go first this time.
All right. Since Sean put me on the spot, if you're out there listening, Sean, I don't think the apology, I think it was in good faith. I think it was a person of goodwill. I don't think it was enough. I think that the community was asking for a leader to present a vision. He seems to be, I actually had him on my own podcast, Our Daily Shelter, and I've talked with him from time to time. I wouldn't say I know him personally. I certainly don't have inside information like Sean does. But my sense is that he is leading as a facilitator and a delegator, and the Black community is looking for a leader who's going to say, I'm not just going to ask these people like my cabinet or my staff or whatever, what they think the right thing is, I'm gonna say this is where we're going, and we better go there. And I'm thinking about, like, I just read the headline of this, so I mean, it's like trying to keep up with the news today is just insane.
Yes.
And I just read the headline, so this could be like a problem to quote this, but I read something about the LA mayor cutting the police budget or reducing the police budget in Los Angeles, which is like a hot spot of overpolicing. And I think that the Black community in Lansing in general is asking for the mayor to take the lead, to stick his neck out and say that's what needs to happen. And I didn't see that. I didn't see it I didn't see it last night. He obviously didn't come prepared. He apologized for not coming prepared. I don't know how you come to a Black Lives Matter thing in the midst of riots and having tear gas, like protesters not ready to like lay out a plan and say, that you got a platform with, was there like 3,000 people watching? That's part of this. That's part of the chess game. I think they pulled off something I have never seen, because Zoom, you can't get 3,000 people in City Hall to watch the Black community control the conversation and put the king on the chessboard in front of 3,000 people. And he was totally like unprepared for that, and his apology didn't. I mean, then that's sort of a double whammy, because then he had time to think about it, and that apology isn't just from him. Like, that's his staff working on what he should say, and he still didn't stick his neck out and say, "Here's what my plan is." Sean is right to say, this is like his generosity as a Black man to say the mayor's got a lot of moving parts and a lot of constituencies, but I don't think that apology video is gonna do anything for him with the Black constituency, the Black community. And his performance last night, I don't think won him. It didn't do anything. It actually did the opposite. When I was asking Sean to rate it on a 10-point scale, that's because I was hearing him respond more favorably to the mayor than I was.
I think he was telling you what he wanted how he wanted him to respond, not he responded this way. I think that's what he was describing. Because you kind of asked a question that I believe was a question like, what did you want the mayor, or what were you hoping he would say? How did you want him to respond?
Okay, well, yeah.
So I think Sean was describing what he could have said.
I just, my sense is that I have a more negative perspective of the mayor's response.
Yeah. Well, I'm right.
Fine. Whether it was an ambush or not, I mean, that all came up. I mean, I think it was also, like, if I were to put it in biblical terms, I'd say there were a lot of biblical sign acts, prophetic biblical sign acts. Isaiah walked around naked for 3 years, and then he said, "Listen, that's because you all are going to be carried away naked." Jeremiah bought new underwear, and he wore it once, and then he went and stuck it in a crack in the mountain, and he came back like a long time later, and it wasn't usable anymore. And he says, "Thus saith the Lord." Like, I mean, it's weird stuff that the prophets do, but there was some biblical moments in that meeting.
My goodness!
Like, the prophets never make you comfortable, all right? And they do things that aren't about like whether they're effective or reasonable or realistic. They do it because it's faithful to what God's working in them. All right,
friends. Friends, if you see Pastor Tom walking around naked in Lansing, it's just a prophetic word, okay? It's not trying to be offensive, okay? Just want to let you guys know.
And I'll probably be over-policed at that point. There'll be a lot of police on me.
Coye, give us your perspective, my brother.
So, all right. So, was the mayor's response appropriate? Was he ambushed? Tom mentioned about the strategic move that was done by them last night, and it was very strategic. He said, you don't see that often. As I was watching the mayor sit there and sweat and tried to navigate his way through. At one point, I thought he was gonna cry. Like that's how bad it looked.
He was twitching. He was twitching.
Yeah, he was twitching. But I will say this: as I was watching it, what I thought was the way he was feeling is the way sometimes as an African American male or a person of color we feel when the police pull us over. Like you get pulled over, then they call for backup. Now you got 3 or 4 officers asking, "Hey, where were you going?" And you tell them, "I was going here." "Hey, what's that in your pocket?" Or I saw the quarterback, the college quarterback, get pulled over, and they actually asked him what was the white substance on his car, on the hood of his car. He said it was bird poop. And they were like, "I don't think so. You're not telling us the truth. What is it?" And he kept saying, "It's bird poop." "No, it's not. We just tested it, and it came up a certain color, so we know it's got some type of drug in it, right?" Which is not true. It was actually like just bird poop. But they asked him like 5 or 6 times over and over again what it was. And it's like 3 or 4 officers before they arrest him. In that moment, you're ambushed. And the difference is the mayor, while he was ambushed on a Zoom call where they had no real authority to do anything or take away his freedom, but they could make him look silly. They could make him backpedal. They could challenge him. They could hold him accountable. And so in essence, again, trying to put it in my terms of, I think it's worse to be ambushed by the police, but that's how we feel when we get pulled over and, 2 or 3 more cars pull up and it's like, man, 6 of y'all, like, it's just me. and I haven't done anything worthy of all this. Okay. So, I felt for the mayor from one perspective because I could relate, I can empathize to some degree because I've been in situations where you did feel like you were caught off guard. He did not show that he was the type of strong leader that we often want in those who are in those positions of power and places of leadership. Because it's one thing to be caught off guard, even in the midst of an ambush, but even then he had some time to recover. He still had the opportunity to in good faith and good conscience show that he not only believed in himself, but he believed in his program and he believed in what he was trying to do. And I never got the sense that he truly believed wholeheartedly in what was going on. I felt like he gave political type answers. How do I try to make you feel like I'm doing something? We got this plan and we're developing it, yada, yada. Okay, man, that's what you kind of said a year ago, as we heard Pastor Sean say earlier. That's what you've been saying. That's what we've been hearing. We're kind of tired of hearing that type of stuff. So, I do think that he was ambushed. He was obviously ambushed. They told him. They said it. So he was ambushed, but he wasn't ambushed like they set a trap for him. He's walking down the sidewalk and boom, he's caught up. They've had relationships for 2 years. They've had meetings. Pastor Sean works closely with him. All those people on the health commission board, they work with him. And then even Michael Lynn and the other woman, Angela, they all have been in meetings together, private meetings. So they have a relationship. And, call it an intervention. And the person who's being intervention, when we do an intervention on somebody, you may not know it's an intervention, and we are kind of setting you up, but this is not a malicious, manipulative, maniacal setup. This is, hey, this is accountability. This is intervention. We got to have a hard conversation. And that's part of what they did last night. And when you have that context that, Sean gave us earlier, you have the context that they have a relationship. This wasn't personal. We've been working together and we haven't seen change. And then let's face it, when they showed the budget, and they said, we had money here and you reallocated and now it's 0% with community type mentoring programs that we want to do. Like 0%. Are you willing to reallocate some of this 21% of $229 million to, give me $1,000, okay? They didn't even say how much. Just give us something so we can invest in these community programs. And when they brought up the fact that you got police officers in schools, listen, my kids go to Sexton High School. I love the police officer who was there because we're friends, but man, that's like a pipeline straight to jail.
Yeah.
Straight to jail. And you don't see police officers in any other schools surrounding Lansing. And so when they have issues, the police don't get called and the police aren't already present. In the Lansing School District, they don't have to call them. They're already there.
Yeah.
And they go downtown. If the offense is bad enough. I mean, fight broke out, they go down. Now it's crazy. So
yeah.
I'd like to just riff real quick on something Coye said. Won't be long. But when you were talking about how a black person feels when the police pull you over, but your life is potentially in danger, but Mayor Schor's life was not in danger.
No.
I think that this was a brilliant, creative, strategic, modern adaptation of MLK's nonviolent active resistance use of the media to put pressure on elected officials with Zoom in front of 3,000 people.
You're not going to let that go while you talk. 3,000 people.
Yeah. Well, again, it's just, this is a classic play in active nonviolent resistance with technology.
Yes.
It was brilliant. And it was nonviolent because he's in no real danger. He's not even in danger of people getting out of control in City Hall or something, like a mob or riot or something. He's in his house.
Yeah.
It was,
and I want to say
nonviolent.
Yeah, and I want to say that that's there. I'm glad, Tom, that you said that, because an ambush for me, and Curt, I will get to you in a second, okay?
I'm chilling.
But in an ambush, it suggests that there were people waiting to attack.
Yeah.
That's why I don't believe it was an ambush, because there's already conversations that's been happening for years already with him and with our mayor. So it's important for us to make that distinction, because I'm going to tell you, Michael Flynn kept his composure.
He sure did.
He kept his composure, and not just kept his composure, but Mayor Schor, one of the things that got me the most disappointed was two things. The first, he was defensive right from the bat.
Yeah.
The first thing he said when Michael Flynn challenged him was you asked me 15 questions. And I'm like,
although he did
ask
ask him 5 questions in a row. I mean,
he did. He said,
3 or 4, but not 15.
He was defensive. He exaggerated how many questions. And second, Michael Flynn's like, is that where we're going? And I think that was a powerful moment. It's is that where we're going? I asked you a question. Let me ask you this question again. And he kept his composure when it came to, and one of the things that got me too upset when I was watching that was simply the fact that there was a part where he actually agreed with, specifically when it talked about, hiring police officers from the city instead of from outside. And he talked about how that's illegal, blah, 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 all that stuff. What irked me and got under my skin was simply oh, that's a conversation worth having. He said that. And I'm like, what? Is nothing else worth having? Is it is only worth having when you agree? Is it only worth having? That's where you see kind of the power structure. And that's what I loved about this meeting, was that the power structure was dismantled, right? In this meeting particularly, the power structure was dismantled.
No, I think it was shifted. I think that the power structure was the narrative was being controlled by Sean and that group of individuals, because they weren't all black. So let's throw that out there too. I mean, majority of them were black, but they controlled that narrative. And that's important. And, you said something, Luis, about the mayor saying that's a conversation worth having. I actually was more offended by when he said, well, the law prohibits me from, only hiring people in the city for the city. And I got to be honest with you, while that may be the law, to me, if I'm in that situation, I want to hear the mayor say, even though that is the law, we should make a strong petition or fight to make some type of exception or some type of way in order to really push for people from our city to police our city.
Change the law.
We need that.
Change the law.
We need that.
Right.
Pick up the banner and change the law.
Right.
That's right. Exactly. Change the law. Right. Yeah, change it. Let's do that, because we do need to be policed by people who are from the city, who are in the city. It would be, because that's not really policing. That is actually serving and protecting.
Yeah, for sure. Curt, what are you thinking? What's going through your mind?
Yeah, I'm just reminded that we really are at that crucial time that Pastor Sean talked about. I think of Andy Schor being a Democrat. I think of him being a nice guy. I think of him coming, and I have a reason here where I'm going. I think of him initially in the phone call saying, "Hey, I condemn police violence." Right? Those things used to be good enough. Those things used to be. But now the fight is no. This could really be it. The Civil Rights Act, passed in the 60s, 68 or whatever,
Yeah.
64, and all of these movements in time, and this is a moment. The whole world, people in Iran are protesting.
Yes.
This is a moment in time. So it's no longer good enough to be a nice guy that is liberal and is sympathetic and stands with Black Lives Matter. It's not
neglect.
Good enough. And it shouldn't. What's that?
Benign neglect.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't be just a figurehead. You really got to be about it. And
yes.
So it's just I thought I might feel bad for when I saw it. So in my whiteness, I think I know, Tom, I appreciate you saw it, but I didn't log on. I knew it was happening. I chose to sit that one out. I got to wrestle with why. But going back, I was like, man, maybe Andy Schor, maybe he did get ambushed, but I didn't feel bad for him at all. I really didn't.
The second time, right? You're talking about the second time.
What do you mean?
You felt bad the first time, and then the second time when you watched
no,
it.
I thought maybe I would feel bad from what I heard about it. Like,
okay.
He got ambushed. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be, But no, I thought it was just I was so impressed by everyone in Black Lives Matter. Just how direct they were, how cool they were, and and I think Andy Schor, he did get defensive. He wasn't able to do what Pastor Sean was asking. He wasn't truly able to sympathize and truly able to be like, tell me more about that. Because he went quickly to, well, we have data where an MSU professor every other year breaks that data down. The data doesn't tell the whole story. It's what our Black and brown brothers are telling us.
Thank you, Curt. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so that's not the whole story. So let's just say one Black person gets pulled over and one white person gets pulled over. Check. It's equal, right? Well, what happened during that stop? What happened during that stop? What kind of language is used during that? There's a whole narrative that data doesn't cover. It's a helpful tool, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And so that was his moment in time to be like, okay, I believe you. And so, I think clearly we can reform how we're spending money, whether it's defunding it or not, I don't know. But I think there was a great point being made with, okay, during COVID-19, the police have said we're not going to take people to jail unless it's a serious thing. And
that was such a great point.
It was such a great point. Like, let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. If you want to keep police in the rural areas and the suburbs the same way, but let's give this a shot. Let's listen.
And part of that was our crime rate has not really gone up, even though you're not putting people in jail right now for small petty things and citations. You're just kind of like, we don't want to put people in the jail during the COVID-19, or no more people than what we have to. And their point was, and our crime hasn't gone up, so obviously we're fine. Now, of course, you can spin that narrative because you can say, well, you're fine because everybody's at home.
That's true.
But the reality of it is we're not really all at home permanently. We are still out.
Oh, sorry, Coye.
No, go ahead.
So this is my racial perspective. When I first heard defund the police and Black Lives Matter put it out there, I initially kind of had I don't know about that. And I'm thinking you're wrong. And I kind of went into my making a case why it was wrong before listening, of course. And I think there's some points that I think can be brought up, though. I mean, if officers are under more stress, it's not going to help anybody. If they're working more hours, that's not going to help anybody.
Right.
if training diminishes, that's not going to help anybody. If whatever, if every call they go to is an intense call, there is trauma that police officers go through. I mean, can you imagine going from a domestic violence call to then the next call being a 3-year-old was burnt with scalding hot water? I used to work in CPS. That happened all the time.
Yeah.
Parents would get a scalding hot water cup and throw it on their face and their whole body would burn. And I saw that multiple times. And so police officers are one hand pulling someone over, and the next moment they're carrying a kid, and the next moment they're de-escalating. It's crazy. So that's where I went initially. But now I think I have a more well-rounded understanding of the Black community. The Black and brown community are saying we're feeling over-policed. In fact, we're policing ourselves. Like Pastor Tom, I just heard of another white brother in near Everett that's organizing with other Black folks in town to neighborhood police their town to make sure police aren't taking advantage of kids of color. So I think both are true. But I didn't hear the humility to be like, man, that you have a point too. I believe you. Good. I believe you. So.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, thanks.
It's interesting. My wife and I, we watched this together last night. Like after our show, I went home and I downloaded it and I watched it because I can't wait. So I was up till almost 3 o'clock last night watching this and watching CNN, right? But one of the things that my wife and I recognize is I do believe that we do not have enough police in our city from the standpoint that there are not that many patrol officers just kind of roaming around the city. So I do think that, the police department can stand for a little bit more help because I think they don't have a whole lot of numbers. Now, that being said, because y'all looking at me crazy. So let me finish. That being said, do you know how often I see somebody at a traffic stop pulled over and there's like 2 to 4 cruisers that will also pull up? Like it's like 3 or 4 cop cars around one stop. All right, like one stop. And I'm not talking about state police, Ingham County, and then Lansing police. I mean, like it can be a couple LPD officers there, and it's like, hey, if this is a routine traffic stop, like there's probably something else going on. And when you do have something that happens in the community, when we really do need the police to show up, man, it takes forever.
Yeah, I would agree with that. In East Lansing, I got pulled over. In East Lansing for my license plate light was out. And 2 cop cars pulled me over for that. So I resonate with that. It was, and they asked me, "Do you know why I stopped you?" I have no idea why you stopped me. I was like, "Oh, your license plate light is out." I'm like, okay, it was 2 squad cars came because my license plate was out.
Curt,
and that's a really good and for us to, one of the things that my cousin Kishlani, she's it was a funny thing about Puerto Ricans. None of us cousins look alike. Some of them can be real dark, others can be real light. So my cousin Kishlani, if you look at her, she looks white. She was telling me yesterday because she's tuned in and she was able to see, and she said yesterday that one time she got arrested. And let me tell you something about my cousin Kishlani. My cousin Kishlani is something else. She is feisty. She is not afraid to tell you what's up. I'm scared of her. Okay. And, she got arrested. I'm not exactly sure why she got arrested, but the police officer arrested her without handcuffing her.
Wow.
Without handcuffing her. And she asked him, "Are you going to handcuff me?" And he said, "No, I don't believe you're a threat."
Wow.
So he arrested her, put her in the squad car, in the back of the squad car with no handcuffs because she wasn't a threat. So, this is real stuff.
Hey, Curt, how many times have you been pulled over and how many times has it been more than one police officer? I've been pulled over 6 or 7 times and never had more than one.
I'm an exception because I'm a horrible driver, Tom.
This is
I
a
mean,
confession moment.
man, I literally have been pulled over a lot, but to that point, I don't know if ever, I can't remember. You know what's interesting is I got pulled over. I was picking up a black guy to go to church, and I got pulled over on the way to church. They ran both of our licenses. He got pulled out of the car, taken to jail on the way to church. It's crazy. So
All because of your bad driving.
yeah, it was. I was driving a $1,200 Honda Civic. This was just like a year and a half ago. So you get profiled just being poor. You know what I mean? There's probably some warrants there too. But I think also the cops saw us, and he saw, a brother sitting next to me, and they lit us up. But and they took him to jail. But even in that case, I don't think they had more than one officer. So I think that's a good point.
I got pulled over in the projects on the south side of Chicago, taking kids from the projects to Chuck E. Cheese, because I worked in a mentor club, by two plainclothes cops in the same car. And so I had like three black kids in my car with a white kid from college age, and it was still just one police car.
Just one car.
One police car. And they separated us. They pulled me out, spread me eagle on the back of my car, patted me down. The other one went to get the story from the kids, and he comes back and he says, "So I hear you're their Sunday school teacher." Then he let us go.
Man.
Yeah.
But still, it was just one car, one cop.
Don't even get me started with Chicago, man, because I grew up in the Chicagoland area. Don't even get me started when it
That was at like 29th and State.
And
Yeah.
let's admit that I get there are times where, depending on the time of night, kind of what's going on, that a cruiser might be riding by, they see a fellow officer pull somebody over, and I get them stopped and you just check on, because that's just common courtesy. But there are times, man, where they call for backup right away.
Yeah.
And I mean, you may not have done anything yet other than just been going a little bit too fast or didn't signal when you changed the lane. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
And it might go to policy too, because I mean, so many people have warrants. It's incredible. I mean, and a lot of the times it's like back fees that you didn't pay, court fees, and it kind of escalates.
Did you know you can actually get a warrant for not paying your taxes?
Wow.
Yes. I have a relative who was just recently pulled over, who works for the state of Michigan. They pulled her over and said, "Hey, there's a warrant out for your arrest." And they were like, "Are you sure?" "Yeah." And they said, "For what?" "Well, you haven't paid taxes." Now this, to the city, this
Wow.
person has gotten taxes back from the city for the last 3 years. And this warrant was like 4 years old. It's like, you haven't paid taxes before.
Like $84.
Yeah, well, I think it was like 12 or something like that. And it's like, how am I getting taxes back the last 2 to 3 years from the city, but I owe you?
You can get a warrant for library books not being returned. We had
That's
this situation.
ridiculous.
We had a situation in our church. They're issuing a warrant, and they had lost the books, and they couldn't pay the $45 book fee, and they're going to get a warrant issued for the rest. So we're like,
and I think that is the point that Black Lives Matter made yesterday.
Yeah, that's too much.
The truth is, police officers have too much on their plate too. They just got they're getting calls because of a homeless person standing in front of your business, and then they have to either remove them or arrest them.
Which is crazy.
That's crazy. See, that's the thing. The thing is, this is not just, let's fight against the cops. We're just saying cops are overworked. They got way too much on their plate, and they're the only government officials that are allowed to use violence.
That's right.
And they're overworked. So those are the things that we need to allocate. And I think that's what Black Lives Matter yesterday was saying. We need to allocate some of those monies into government programs and other programs that will actually help the homeless instead of arresting them, that will actually help our communities instead of getting them, or help our students instead of getting into a simple fight and getting arrested for it, right? Back in the day when I was growing up, which is not that long ago, but I mean, back in the day when I was growing up, you get into a fight, that was it. How many fights I didn't get into? That was it. I got into so many fights in school. But what happened, nowadays, kids get into fights in schools, they go downtown.
They can go downtown.
And that's not right. Kids are gonna fight.
Yep.
You know,
that's the pipeline to prison thing.
Anyway, we are over an hour, so
we are way over time.
Yeah, so we're gonna stop the time there. We answered that question anyway. The last question, which was, are we over policed? And I think that was what we spent our time speaking about. And I think we're all in agreement that we are. Again, we appreciate every single one of you that stayed and hear this conversation. We love you guys. Thank you so much for stopping by, and we will see you tomorrow. We love you.